Concrete promises. In 2019, the state of Westmore, a thriving U.S. region with ambitious infrastructure dreams, launched the Highway Future Initiative, a $2.3 billion plan to rebuild its aging roads and bridges. The project was hailed as a landmark investment in progress. But 3 years later, what was supposed to be a symbol of modernization became a case study in financial deceit. This is the story of concrete promises, how greed, politics, and betrayal turned asphalt into evidence. The missing millions. It began innocently, an internal audit request from the Department of Transportation. A new budget director noticed discrepancies in contractor payouts, repeated invoices, duplicate payments, and unusual retainer fees under different vendor IDs. When the total was summed, the figure was staggering: $68.7 million unaccounted for. The state called in the Forensic Financial Bureau, FFB, a private investigative firm specializing in government fraud. Leading the team was Eleanor Briggs, a veteran forensic auditor known for her meticulous eye and unflinching ethics. Eleanor had seen it all: embezzlement, procurement collusion, and the slow decay of integrity in public finance. But something about Westmore felt different. The numbers weren't just off, they were engineered. Following the paper trail. The FFB's approach was clinical. Every payment voucher, contractor invoice, and project authorization was uploaded into a proprietary audit tracking system. Within weeks, patterns emerged. Several construction companies shared suspicious traits. Same billing addresses listed under different names. Identical formatting in invoices, down to the font and margin width. Payments authorized late at night, minutes apart. Eleanor's deputy, forensic data analyst Raj Patel, ran a cross-reference through the Secretary of State's business registry. 5 of the supposed vendors were traced back to a single incorporator, Frontier Management Group LLC, a shell holding with ties to Mason Kearns, the governor's senior infrastructure advisor. The case had just escalated. The web of deceit. Digging deeper, the FFB uncovered a sophisticated kickback network. Frontier Management acted as a front for several fake construction subcontractors: North Delta Earthworks, Cedar Bridge Supply, and Horizon Asphalt Company. Each issued legitimate-looking invoices for road materials that were never delivered. When payments were approved, the money flowed through a series of pass-through accounts before being withdrawn in cash or funneled offshore. Eleanor's team followed the trail to Cayman Global Trust, an offshore bank notorious for concealing politically exposed clients. But here was the twist. One of the signatories on those accounts wasn't a state official or contractor. It was Samuel Ortiz, a low-level procurement clerk from the Department of Transportation. The whistleblower. When confronted, Ortiz didn't deny it. In a closed-door interview, trembling and exhausted, he confessed. He had been coerced into opening the offshore accounts in his name in exchange for bonus payments. The real orchestrators, he said, were people above my pay grade. He provided an encrypted flash drive containing thousands of emails between the shell companies and Frontier Management. The language was coded, but the intent was clear. Every fraudulent invoice, every transfer, had been sanctioned from within the governor's executive committee. Ortiz broke down. They said it was campaign financing. That everyone does it. I just wanted to keep my job. The audit becomes a war. Once the report was filed, political chaos erupted. The governor's office denied involvement, accusing FFB of political bias. A smear campaign began against Eleanor Briggs, painting her as a corporate mercenary hired to undermine the administration. Meanwhile, evidence started disappearing. Backup servers were wiped. Key witnesses retracted statements. Ortiz went missing for 72 hours before turning up at a motel outside town, alive but terrified. Eleanor realized this wasn't just financial fraud, it was institutional rot. She requested federal support, bringing in the Bureau of Fiscal Crimes, BFC, a federal law enforcement agency specializing in public fund embezzlement. With subpoenas and forensic imaging tools, the Joint Task Force reconstructed deleted correspondence and payment histories. The picture that emerged was damning. More than $120 million in diverted public funds, with signatures from multiple high-ranking officials, including Mason Kearns. Betrayal within. But just as indictments loomed, Eleanor's world collapsed. Her deputy, Raj, was arrested for allegedly leaking classified audit findings to the press. The leaked report suggested that FFB executives were negotiating immunity deals with political donors. It was a fabrication, but it discredited the entire investigation. The FFB's contract was suspended. Eleanor was subpoenaed to testify before a hostile legislative committee. Her own credibility was under attack by the same people she was investigating. Behind closed doors, Raj confessed that he'd been approached by a lobbyist offering $500,000 to slow down the audit. When he refused, his identity was used as a scapegoat for leaks he never made. Eleanor's trust in her team, and in the justice system, was shattered. Rebuilding the case. Refusing to give up, Eleanor worked off the record. With help from federal forensic technologist Lisa Monroe, she decrypted hidden metadata in the audit files. The timestamps matched Kearns's official travel schedule, proving he authorized payments remotely while on policy tours. The final piece came from a data trail embedded in one of the fake invoices, a hidden spreadsheet formula that led to the private Gmail of Governor Charles Avery himself. It was no longer speculation. The audit trail had reached the top. The arrest. In February 2023, federal prosecutors unsealed 27 indictments. Governor Avery, Mason Kearns, and 7 other officials were charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, racketeering, and obstruction of justice. In court, the prosecution relied heavily on FFB's forensic reconstruction, a digital timeline of every transaction, cross-linked with authorization emails and metadata. It was one of the most complex forensic exhibits ever presented in a public corruption trial. Eleanor's testimony was calm, precise, and devastating. Numbers don't lie. People do. And when the paper trail is followed without fear, the truth finds light. Avery was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. Mason Kearns, who turned state's witness, received 8. Ortiz was granted immunity and entered witness protection. Months later, Eleanor stood at the site of a new highway bridge, built honestly this time. Her firm's reputation had survived, but her faith in institutions was forever altered. As the documentary camera pans over the finished highway, her voice narrates. Corruption isn't always loud. Sometimes, it hides in paperwork, polished reports, and handshakes. But every lie written on a balance sheet leaves a mark, and every mark can be traced. Moral and call to action. The story of concrete promises reminds us that corruption doesn't begin with millions, it begins with silence. Auditors, citizens, and public servants must refuse complacency. Every receipt, every approval, every unexplained transaction deserves scrutiny. Because public money is the people's money, and accountability is the foundation of democracy.